Vuyisa Lungana Daily. It is love, it is truth, it is inspiration. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for choosing to tune in. Politics is something that is always up for discussion in a country like ours, which is South Africa. And precisely at this moment, that is what I'd like to get into politics. And more specifically, the Gangster State book that has just come out, written by Peter Louis. Yeah, the book has a lot of allegations. It makes a whole lot of damning allegations from what I've heard. I haven't read the book myself. I've just pretty much heard about it in the media and read about it a bit, in some reviews somewhere along the line. But the point is, the book is out, it's there, it's making a whole lot of damning allegations against one in particular, Ace Magashule, which is currently the Secretary General of the African National Congress, the ANC, the ruling party, the current people who are in state. But looking at this whole thing of this book, I get it. All right, Peter Louis has released a book making all these damning allegations and all of that. And yes, we appreciate the fact that he's brought all these things to our attention and he's exposed people like Ace Magashule for the, let's not use any offensive words, but for the indiscretions that they have been busy with for the past 25 years since they've had, the opportunity to run state and dictate the direction which South Africa needs to go and is going. But here's my thing. Here's how I choose to view this whole situation. Yes, Peter Louis, you've written this book. It's out here. We all can read it and see the damning allegations. But where are the other books? Where are similar books that expose the kind of malfeasance that was happening pre-1994? Because this is all about what is happening post-1994. And there's great concern from my side where that is concerned. Because, look, all of a sudden now, after 1994 and the ANC is into power, you have all these authors like Peter Louis and others coming out with books with all these heavy allegations and exposing all these corrupt politicians. Where were these people pre-1994 when the National Party was in government? Where were these books like Gangster State, and exposing all the corruption and rot that was happening? And we know, obviously, the biggest one was apartheid, oppressing, dark-skinned people in the country. Where are books that have been written by similar people like Peter Louis and others? Where are such books that describe, and uncover and expose things that were happening pre-1994? Because what it looks like now, it really, from an individual perspective, it really seems like there's this attack and there's this agenda against the current people or the current leadership that we have right now. It looks like, because obviously these people are the ANC, they are the ones who represent the majority of, the dark-skinned people in the country and all the sorts. Other parties have come along, over the years, but primarily the ANC is dark-skinned and is right now in the rule of power. They are the state. And then you have light-skinned people, because it goes down back to that. You know what I mean? As much as there are dark-skinned people that also are exposing, I don't know if maybe they've written books. I haven't heard of any as far as yet. But maybe they are doing the very same thing, writing books and exposing all these things that are happening with our current state and, exposing such corruptions. But when it comes from somebody like this, Peter Louis, and this person is just solely focused on the current state, which is the ANC, and exposing all these malfeasance and all these corrupt acts about the ANC. How about going a bit further? If you really, about progressing South Africa as a country, as a society, as a nation, then you don't just focus on the guy that's fixing the problems. Because honestly, the ANC has been the only party and the only one, so thus far, that's really had a real shot, an attempt at fixing what was wronged by the National Party, fixing all these malfeasance that came about because of apartheid and the oppression that came with it. The ANC are the first ones to actually have a real goal, have a real attempt at trying to fix these problems. And I think it's very problematic for people like this to be coming out and just pointing fingers. You know, people like Peter Louis, people like the media, we are all just pointing fingers and saying, you're doing this wrong. You're not doing that right. That person is corrupt. This, that, and the other. But we're not actually fair. And here's what I mean by we are not fair. We are looking at the ANC right now as the people who are in government, and we expect them to fix what has been wronged for the past however many centuries or decades. You know, in what, 25 years? Really? And we're already pointing so much fingers. We are not really pointing the fingers at ourselves to say, what am I doing to help the ANC out? And look, we haven't really looked at who the ANC is. Let's look at who the ANC is for a moment. Just briefly, the ANC are people who come from oppression themselves, you know. These are people who feel they have something to make up for in the 30, 40 years, whatever years that they have lost being in the struggle and being oppressed. Now they are here. They have these opportunities in front of them. And, you know, I'd go as far to say that if I were in the very same position that some of the ANC leaders are in, I would pretty much do the very same thing. Because look, I have been oppressed and been deprived of all these opportunities for the past 30 years or so of my life. Now for the next 30 years, I'm going to make up for that. You know what I mean? I am going to make sure that I live in a very nice house, I have a comfortable life and all of that. I'm going to first fix things in my life before I start thinking about fixing the rest of the country. And I think for me, it's fair, you know, looking at where you come from and, you know, what you've had to go through and where you are, right? That's a fair position to be in. Hence, I'm saying if I was in the very same position, I'd be doing exactly the very same thing that the politicians or the current leaders in South Africa are doing. But here's the gist. Here's the actual cause of the problem. It's not the ANC. It's the people that were there before the ANC. Those are the actual real cause of the problem. And nobody is pointing a finger at that. People like Peter Louis, people like ENCA are not going back and saying, hey, we need to question you guys. You private sector, you corporate entities, you investor, whoever you are in South Africa. You know where South Africa comes from. You know South Africa comes from an oppressive past. You know, a past that is full of divisions based on irrelevant things like race. So, in the Rainbow Nation sense, because if I were to ask anybody right now, including the state, private, whoever, if I were to ask whoever right now in South Africa, this question that, do you have or do you want the best for South Africa? The answer I would get is yes. And if that is your answer, then why are you not helping the situation? Why are you as the private sector continuing to be private and using your private privilege to exploit our leaders? Because that's what the private sector is doing. The private sector is exploiting our leaders because our leaders are people that come from oppression, are people that come from poverty, and they are seeking this money. And who has this money? The privates. And they are using that money power to exploit our leaders. And ultimately, our leaders exploit us, the South African public. So for me, as a media practitioner, as a broadcaster, I'm going to use the power that I have to hold these people accountable, not just the state. Because that's where you first get it wrong. Once you always go to the state and hold the state accountable, and in most cases without actually properly looking at who the state is. As I've just alluded to, the state itself comes from poverty. So it's looking to eradicate that within itself first. You know, I hold everyone accountable. Every individual in South Africa, I hold you accountable to say, look, before you even run to the government, who are you? What are you doing about the situation? More particularly the private sector, because they are the people that are responsible for the chaos that we see in the country. They are the people that are responsible for townships. They are the main reason why we have places called townships and other places called suburbs. They are the reason why there's a Soweto and a Sandton today. Why aren't we fucking pointing the finger at them and saying, hey, look, man, this is your fault as well. And you are standing there on the side pointing fingers with the rest of us. Oh, it just does not work, you know. So we need to be asking harder questions, not just of the state and politicians and the people who are supposedly leading us, but we need to be asking questions, or rather tough questions, of ourselves and everybody else who inhabits this beautiful land of South Africa.